Is this a big deal or not?
Of course it is. It's a big deal now. It will continue to be a big deal for as long as he is Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police. Every time there is a controversy involving police investigation, either of politicians, as has happened in recent years with the Liberal government, or other controversial, sensitive issues, people will wonder, was he the right person? Is the Premier's office calling the shots? And that's not right.
What about the lack of evidence, or what evidence that the acting commissioner put forward? Some of it is clearly wrong. Some of it has already been debunked. And the idea that this is sour grapes for a man being passed over.
Well, let's deal with sour grapes first. Of course, you're a journalist, I'm a journalist. We know that people tend to have motivations for coming forward. They don't just do it always out of the goodness of their heart. But what's in it for him? Sour grapes. There's no payoff for giving vent to sour grapes. He could have quietly gone off into retirement and not raised a word about this. There's no sense of vindication, I think, that will pay off. I think it's a public service. I think it takes guts to do this. We've seen a previous OPP commissioner complain that this is not the right thing to do, that this is demoralizing and improper. We've seen a former RCMP chief complaining in the last day or so that this is the wrong thing to do. So this is just one more piece added to the evidence that the game was rigged, that the hiring competition was jury-rigged, by stacking the deck for the actual people hiring, his former boss was on it, and also by changing the qualifications, downgrading the qualifications so that Taverner, who was not previously qualified for the job, could submit his application.
Now, Blair points out that the previous government's explanation that would open it up to a wider field, he points out in his letter that is not what happened.
Doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up, but I want to play for you.
Because to be clear for our listeners, there were plenty of qualified candidates in that pool.
In the original pool before it was widened to allow, I think he says 2 or 3 more actually came in. Now, here is the Premier in the House after the Taverner appointment saying that he had absolutely nothing to do with the selection.
There was no better choice, a transparent choice, by the way, that I wasn't involved in whatsoever. There were 3 people, individual people on a panel that made that decision. I didn't know that decision, Mr. Speaker, until the day it was made.
3 people on the panel. One of those people at one point, according to the allegations by Mr. Blair, is, and here's his name again, Dean French, the Chief of Staff. Is that appropriate?
It's not appropriate, and to pretend to insult people's intelligence time after time and say that I wasn't personally involved, I didn't press the button, is highly misleading. The fix was in. He stacked the deck with the hiring commission, and his chief of staff, who is his fixer and, if I may say, breaking everything up along the way, Dean French, was calling the shots on this, as he has on other matters. The Star has already explained how he instructed staff to call the Toronto and other police and tell them to lead people away in handcuffs on the day that cannabis was legalized as a kind of publicity stunt, and wanted to see people on television being led away. This is not the way to run the police. It smacks of a police state. I'm not saying we're in a police state, but it's the same kind of playbook where you're calling the shots behind the scenes, and sometimes you get caught out.
Your most recent column on this, again, draws a direct line from Donald Trump and Comey right through here to what's happened here and the hiring and with the expected appointment of Ron Taverner. Is that not just going a little too far and going for the low-hanging fruit, Martin?
Good question. A lot of people bristle at the comparisons to Donald Trump. They're different politicians. Donald Trump plays the race card a lot of the time. I don't see Doug Ford doing that, particularly. What's similar is the playbook. And in this particular case, it's the loyalty test. It's all about loyalty to me as premier or as president, in the case of Donald Trump, rather than loyalty and fidelity to the people and maintaining sacrosanct the principle of police independence. This is not an ideological issue of right-wingers or left-wingers, surely. This is a question of what's right and what's wrong. And there are a lot of Tories who are not happy to see somebody putting in place a 72-year-old crony who never made the cut in the Toronto Police at the top or secondary ranks as deputy chief, suddenly being installed in a position where he was supervising 8,000 police across the province. That's just not right.
We have also had reporting from the Star that he was also considered to be the head of the Ontario Cannabis Store. Martin, thank you for being with me. That is a great segue, because coming up,